Joey Ryan, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Jeremy? Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, it's all my pleasure, sir. You're a hard man to get a hold. You're very accessible for sure, which is refreshing. But you are a busy man. I got to tell you, I'm surprised we were able to squeeze this in today. You're out in Vegas right now.
Yeah, I'm out here at the APA Masters, the World Championships here at the Westgate. And, I've been meaning to connect with you. And I said, well, wait a minute, I have like an hour and a half before my match. Let's get it on.
Let's do it, man. Yeah, I was just able to get my baby boy kind of settled down. My wife just got home from work. It's been hectic. So, but such is the nature of the beast, man. How are you guys making out there? So you guys played a match yesterday, right?
Yeah, we had a bye and then we won two. And so we're in the spot where it's kind of like it's a modified single elimination. So you're guaranteed two matches, not two wins. I'm sorry, not two losses. And so if we lose, we're out at this point. So we play at 5. If we win, we play at 9 and that kind of thing.
I got you. Sounds good, man. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Um, so I generally with my podcast, I don't want it to be, a carbon copy of the Pool Player podcast, East Coast version. So generally my interviews are going to be more of me having a conversation about pool with somebody. But today I think it's going to be a little bit different. I think I am going to do kind of a carbon copy of the Pool Player podcast, but flipping the script here because you're usually on the other end of this. So I'd like to take an opportunity, and I know myself personally, I'm as far as I know, I've watched every episode of the Pool Player podcast that has ever come out, and I intend to keep doing so. I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
Um, so I've got big bits and pieces of the Joey Ryan story, if you will, along the way. I feel like I know a little bit about Joey Ryan, but I'd like to piece some of that together today. And I'm probably going to steal a couple of your questions without even try. I actually don't have any notes or anything. This is me and you. We decided to do this right now at the last second. We've been busy. So starting right out, let's, what was it that got you into the game? What was the first thing that drew you into this?
So my dad was a pretty good player in like Maryland. We grew up in Baltimore, but he played in like Southern Pennsylvania straight pool leagues and some bar leagues around Baltimore County and Carroll County. And he just always loved to teach me how to play pool. And it was something that we always shared. To this day, when I go back to visit, we go down to the basement and we hit balls. So it's just a bond that we had. And so, my dad got me interested in the game. And I say this quite often that there's a lot of different things that we would play together. We'd play sports or, board games, things like that. And he'd always let me win certain games. It's like, oh, I'll let you win. So you keep playing, you don't get discouraged. He never let me win in pool. In fact, it was from the time I was 5 years old till 12 years old. I never beat him in one game of 8 ball, not one game. Like he didn't scratch on the 8. The ball didn't jump off the table, no early 8s. I was like, how am I going to beat this guy? And there were many days where I came up from the basement crying, like one day I'm going to beat him, and I honestly think that's what gave me the fire to really want to play competitive pool. And so, I went to college, and during those years, I didn't play that much. But then I went through a period of time where I had an illness. I had tonsil cancer, actually, and I had some surgeries, chemo, radiation. And after that, I kind of realized at 28 years old, like, why not? It's kind of like that song from Tim McGraw, Live Like You Were Dying, like ride that bull, and I was like, I have this talent and I'm pretty good. What if I dedicated myself to the sport and really tried to get better? And so for a 5-year period of time, I did that, and I did get a lot better, so for the folks listening that are, trying to get better at pool, there is a path to that. You just have to work really hard. And I played a lot of pool and I sacrificed a lot during that time. So in that period of time, relationships suffered, other things suffered, work might've suffered, but I really played a lot of pool in that period of time, and I did elevate my game. And then I ended up meeting my wife. We got married, and the rest is kind of history. I play pool when I can now.
How did that look? Was it almost an instantaneous elongated break, or did you still kind of maintain like that once a week league play, or what?
Yeah. So one thing that I've said that over the years, a lot of people say, well, to get better, you got to match up, you got to play for money. And, there's some truth to that, right? If you're going to go out and put the heat on yourself and play for money, then yeah, you're going to get better under pressure. But I didn't really have a lot of money to go out and play for thousands of dollars. And I didn't even like that aspect of the game where, you're always trying to find an angle or an edge. I'd rather just compete in tournaments. And so for about 15 years of my life, I maintained a high level pool by playing one or two, I'd say 1.5 tournaments per week. But I made sure they were the best tournaments against the best competition in my region. Where you're paying $20, but you're going to play a pro caliber player in that tournament, and you just tried, like hell to win. And so that's what I did for about 15 years and maintain a pretty high level of play.
Was that still in Maryland? When did you move out west?
Yeah, so I was in Maryland. Let's see, 2010, I left the DC area at that time. I had moved down from Maryland to DC. And then in 2010, I moved to Jacksonville, Florida. 2014, I moved to Denver, Colorado. And then 2017, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona. And so each of those places, they have something to offer, the sport of pool. And, I was in Denver and there were a couple really good tournaments per week. Phoenix is different. There's not a lot of open tournaments, not a lot of events that I can play in, but the amateur scene is just huge out there. And really that's what kind of inspired me to start with the Pool Player Podcast. And, I just saw all the enthusiasm, people who are like a 400 speed Fargo, but own like $2,000 worth of cues and all they can think about is pool. I'm like, wow, we can do something with this, so yeah.
It's a really interesting point you make about how many people there are out there that are, 4 to 500 Fargos, your intermediate level players, not really like A players or whatever, but crazy enthusiastic about pool. It came up in the interview with Freddie Ognier that I did. We're talking about commentary, of course. And one of the things that I tend to forget doing commentary is how many players there are out there listening that do not understand the game at the level that we're breaking it down at. So interesting point. And there is, like you said, they're out there. They're everywhere. Crazy enthusiastic about pool.
Yeah.
And just a quick note on the $20 tournaments that you're talking about. If those were in Maryland, I don't know what the scene was like back then, but I know now there's $20 tournaments over there in Glen Burnie and the surrounding areas, and they are no fun for anybody. Like I know guys that you probably have no idea. I play about a 600 speed, right around 600. And there's guys that play considerably better than me that never cash over there in these $20 tournaments that we're talking about. So anybody out there listening,
oh yeah,
you want to improve your game. I mean, that's the way to do it. You don't have to gamble big money. You don't have to lose all kinds of money all the time. You go play a $20 tournament where half the field is above 600 Fargo. I mean, you're going to get better.
Absolutely. I can't agree with that more. And, when I was living in Maryland back 15, 20 years ago, just the weekly tournaments themselves. I mean, you'd play Mike Davis, Brandon Schaff, Keith McCready, Sean Wilkie, tons of great players out there. Ones that I'm not even mentioning right now that most people might not have heard of, but they were strong players. And it was really good for my game. And, going into each of those and making it your own personal challenge, right? That's not my night to go out and drink and goof off and whatever. That's my night to focus. That's my Super Bowl, the Tuesday night tournament, that I'm paying $20 to get into. And if you treat every event like that, then you're going to get the results out of that. Even if it's 2 and out, you're going to learn from it and you're going to go back and work on things so that you can perform better under pressure next time.
I couldn't agree with more of that. And one piece of advice I'd give to players out there is don't just go to the tournament and lose your 2 matches and call it a night and go home. One thing that really helped my game, I actually started running tournaments. There was kind of a spot that needed to be filled running the tournaments at the venue that I would go to on the weekends. And one thing I learned is the amount of grind that goes into being there from when you get there at 5 or 6 o'clock until somebody wins at 12:30, 1 o'clock, sometimes 2 o'clock in the mornings. You don't realize the amount of you have to do it for a long time. And
Yeah.
even like improving your game and getting to where you can win that match or two, like you still have to take it to the next level where you can do it back to back to back all night long when you're tired. And you have to be playing your best pool when you're at your worst physically. So there's a lot that goes into that as well. I just sitting around watching the better players and how well they play throughout the tournament will really improve your game, and you can't beat it for a $20 night out. So
Yeah. And like you said, also that, you don't just take your 2 losses and go home. If you look at, I was in Tucson a couple of weeks ago at the Predator CSI event, the pro tournament, right? And in that tournament, you had Carlo Beato, you had Roland Garcia, these great Filipino players, Edgy Geronimo. And what happened when they weren't playing a match? They were on the tables. They're on the tables like it's, hey, this is free practice time for hours and hours on end, practicing their break for an hour and a half or practicing shots. And, that's one thing for a $20 tournament, you're not getting charged green fees or anything like that. So go set up on a table as it's open and hit balls around and, just keep practicing and take advantage of that time that you're at that pool room, to watch, to learn, and then to also practice in between your matches and afterwards. It's a good point.
And you know what? I just thought of this, but another thing that goes into that is someday you'll be able to get through a couple of those matches when you're not playing very well. And I hear guys all the time say, tonight's just not my night, or I'm playing terrible tonight. And there'll be a day, if you keep at it, where you get a little bit better and you may not have your best game, but you'll survive those first couple of matches. And by the end of the night, you might be playing great. Just because you play a bad set or a half of a bad set doesn't mean it has to be a bad night. And I've seen so many times guys come in, they go 2 and out, they're frustrated, they pack up their cues, and they leave the pool hall with that bad thought, that bad feeling. And it's hard to kind of transcend that feeling into a good one by the time you make it back to the pool hall the next time. You may carry it over with you. But if you just stick it out, like you said, the Filipino guys playing pool, doing what they love, that good feeling can come back a lot quicker. And some of these slumps that last guys 2, 3, 4 months, you can get rid of them in a week or two sometimes, I think.
Yeah, we were talking about this, and in this day and age, you got to be careful what you say because almost anything could be culturally insensitive. But we were talking about just the demeanor of the Filipino players and how we really believe that helps them compete at the highest level, right? Because they never really seem to get too mad at themselves. They never really seem to take themselves too serious. They have this sort of nature about them. And, there's been times where I've slumped as a player, like right now is actually one of them. And what I try to do is I try to get to the table each time and just try to stay happy. Try to be in that. Happy is a weird word, but I can't think of a better word right now. But try to keep your demeanor in kind of a pleasant, positive light. And that way, when things happen to you on the table, you're not going to get down into that negative mindset because it's really hard to play well when you think the table's stacked against you. When you're playing your best pool, every table looks like a run out. When you're playing bad pool, every table looks impossible. So if you go into it with that mindset of being very positive and, hey, I'm just going to roll with the punches, I'm going to have fun, I think you're going to have a much better outcome.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you said. And the word that I use is actually gratitude. Because if you think back to a time before, there was a time when all of us started playing tournaments. And before that, we didn't know anything about it. We started playing tournaments. And if you remember that feeling you got when you went to a tournament, like when you'd only played 2 or 3, maybe you'd only played 4 or 5. You were so excited to get to go play in a pool tournament.
Yep.
But then, you get a little better. You start getting some good results. You start having certain expectations with your game. And then it's real easy to get into a mindset where the results on the table dictate the feeling that you have at the pool hall. And I like to, when I have that problem and I catch myself like that, I try to get back to that. When I'm on the way to the pool hall, tell them, I get to play pool today. I get to do my favorite thing in the world today. And there's not really much that can happen at the pool hall, negative or positive, when you have that mindset that can really take you to that negative mind space.
That's a great point. And also to add to that, when you talk about results, I think that's the biggest problem that players have, right? And it's not just pool, it's life, right? If you're results oriented, like I studied poker for a while and played some poker, and you can make the wrong play and make money. but if you do that over the long run, you're going to lose money, and it's kind of the same way in pool. A lot of people tend to be results oriented and, oh, I won a tournament or I finished second in this tournament. Isn't that great? Well, maybe you got some good rolls. Maybe some things happen. Maybe you got lucky. And then other tournaments, maybe you played really well, and you just didn't get there. But, a lot of the pros that I've interviewed, they talk about this, not being results oriented, being focused on the process, being focused on playing optimal pool. And sometimes you get a bad beat, sometimes you don't, but that's where you should be focusing your energy, not on first and second places, or I won that match, or the waitress sharked me, or whatever, but focus on what you're doing and not be results driven, but try to play the best pool you can play.
Yeah, and the poker, the interesting thing about poker is if you listen to guys break down poker at a high level, a very, very intricate breakdown, what they talk about is frequencies and how many times this will happen out of 100 if you play it this way. And they make their decisions based on what the best play is in the long run. And so the one thing that goes along with the results orientation that you're talking about is individual matches mean so much. Individual games mean so much. But like you said, in poker, in the long run, if you do the right thing, you're going to be the guy that makes more money overall by the end of a long sample size. And that's one thing that the more experienced players tend to do better than the inexperienced players is when you're first starting out and you've only played 10 tournaments, every tournament is the end of the world. It's, you lose to some guy that you're supposed to beat and you're something's going terribly wrong with your game. But if you play this game for a long time, you know that I can beat anybody and I can lose to anybody, and it's going to come down to how I play in that moment. So it's funny. I said I was going to get you on here to do an interview, and it's turning into a conversation anyways. So I love it though. I could talk about pool all day, especially with yourself. This is awesome. So you mentioned you are from Maryland, and I believe you still have a brother that lives in Maryland.
Yeah, he lives in Westminster, Maryland.
Okay, so how often do you make it back out to the East Coast? I'm curious.
Yeah, not as often as I'd like. I have 3 children, so flying everybody out there is a couple $1,000s just getting out there. But I do come out there for work quite a bit. In fact, I'll be out there in a couple weeks at the National Harbor for a conference or a training. And so when I get out there, I'll meet him at a pool room usually, or I'll head over to his house and we'll play pool in his basement. But yeah, his name's Dave. He's a good player. I think talent-wise, it's funny with pool, you watch people play and you see people maybe who haven't played as much as you have, and you're like, man, if they would have invested that time, they would have surpassed me. And that's the way I feel about Dave. I think he's got a lot of natural talent. He just has a lot of responsibility and family and other priorities, but he's a good player. And again, he had the same experience of learning from my dad and growing up in that environment.
That's awesome. So now the reason I bring that up is because I have been given implicit instructions for this interview specifically. My boss, his name is Eric Brobst. He's a contractor, and I'm a carpenter. I work for him. He has a beautiful custom home that he built in Townsend, Delaware. His basement is set up like it's got a beautiful bar, beautiful 9-foot diamond pool table. Nice. And we have a commentary booth set up in the other room. We actually live stream a lot of matches from there. It's called Brope Saloon Billiards. You can actually find it on Facebook. Check it out if you want. Most of the commentary that I do is there. But I was given implicit instructions by Eric to make sure that that next time you're on the East Coast, if we can work it out, or one of the next times you're on the East Coast, we would love to have you come out to Brope Saloon Billiards and set up a challenge match for you to play, for us to live stream. You could hang out and meet all of us. We'd love to have you, and your brother as well, if he would enjoy coming out. And it's a beautiful, beautiful home and a beautiful room. And my boss wanted me to give that invitation to you personally.
Well, thank you. That's awesome, and I definitely look forward to that.
I don't know who we get you to play. I mean, your Fargo is going to scare a lot of people.
There's tons of good players there. There's tons of good players.
I might have to roll the footage of the Christina Tkach match for somebody, and then you'll get all the action.
Yeah, that one wasn't too good, was it?
I'm sorry. I don't mean to rub salt in the wound. It's still a little bit fresh, I'm sure.
Let me tell you about that match. It was very interesting because I played competitively for a long time, and I'm not a pro. I'm a good amateur. And in all of the different venues that I've played or tournaments that I've played, I've never played with a shot clock. And I always thought, well, I play pretty fast, so the shot clock's not going to bother me. And, we see it on the Mosconi Cup, the Matchroom events, and everybody looks at it. And I think a lot of fast players think, oh, well, that would never bother me. It does. It's a problem. If you're not used to playing with it, it is a big problem. And just simple things, right? Because I'm the kind of guy if I pull out a bridge and I use the bridge and I put the bridge under the table and it's not aligned perfectly under the table, I'm a little anal like that. I want to get the bridge positioned properly. So I don't know if you remember it. I had one shot where I pulled out the bridge and I had the extension on my cue. It was really long. And so getting the bridge, getting the extension, looking at the clock, I called my extension. I said, I got to take an extension here. I leaned over the table. I shot the shot. I put the bridge down. It didn't lay right. I had to fiddle with it. I got it in position. I took the extension off my cue. I walked back over. I laid it down and started rolling away. I fiddled with it 3 times before I threw it on the ground. I get back to the table. There's 10 seconds left on the clock. I mean, that 30 seconds goes so fast. And it's like if you take one walk around the table to look at an angle and you come back, you're going to hear the beeps. And you don't want to hear the beeps. So I think in some ways that really, my dad always used to say every good pool player's got to have 100 excuses for why he lost. Well, that's one I'm sticking with. That's a good one.
That's pretty fair. And for the first time to play on a stream table with a shot clock like that, 30 seconds is fast, even for shot clock standards. That's a very, very quick one. And I think the extension, if I'm not mistaken, was only 20 seconds. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually got into it a little bit with John Lehman there because I called an extension. And then all of a sudden I have 27 seconds left. And I'm like, John, I'm not getting my full extension. And he's like, I'll look at it. I'll check it out. And so the next time I called my extension, it said 28. I looked, I said, John, it says 28. He's like, it's a 20-second extension. Like, duh. And I didn't even know that. But so what they would do if you had 8 seconds left, it would get added to the 20 and you'd have 28 seconds. But yeah, it was definitely a new experience for me. And something that I would want to practice to get better at for the next time I'm in that circumstance.
Yeah, it's awesome. Did you see, it really affected the shootout with Mike DeShane. He had made his first 2. The gentleman, I think it was Gus,
Briseno.
He's a local Arizona guy, right? He had made his first 2 as well, I think. And Mike goes to shoot the 3rd shot and he sees something on the cue ball and he wipes it on the rail and he looks at it and it's still there. And he wipes it on the rail and he looks at it and he looks up. He forgot there was a shot clock for the shootout. And I think I think Jeremy Jones was like, there's a shot clock. He's got to shoot. And he put the cue on the table and got down and one-stroked it and fired it right into the rail. And of course, Gus goes on to win that shootout and Mike's over on the B side. So you weren't the only one that affected for sure.
Yeah, Mike, Mike is an interesting guy and we had him on the Booth Brothers and he was going out to that event and, he's pretty critical of the format out there, but he's coming back off a layoff too. So all of this is new to him, and I appreciated the conversations I had with him out there. I think that, the format was something that was exciting. And if I'm not out there grinding it out to make a living, so I can speak to it from kind of a fan industry person perspective. And I thought it was amazing. Now, if I were a player grinding it out to make, my travel expenses back, I might feel differently. But every time there was a shootout, the fans would gather around the table. It was exciting. So I kind of like the format.
Yeah, and as we saw, like I did a statistical breakdown of that event, and I think Mike Page kind of went even farther in depth with it, and you see that the top players got where they got. I mean, I think you had to go out 23 of the top 24 players ranked by Fargo in that field made the top 24.
Yeah.
With the only exception, I believe, being Oscar Dominguez. I think he was the only one that didn't make the top 24 that was ranked in the top 24. And the other Arizona guy.
Well, Mike DeShane didn't make it, right?
Well, Mike DeShane didn't cash, but he finished T17, one spot out of the money, so still top 24. Yeah,
Well, I talked to Ozzie Reynolds quite a bit out there, and I told him I like the format, and I said, you better hope like the best players win, because that's the way to kind of say, see, I told you so. The best players are still going to win, and with the exception of DeShane, all the best players were really right there at the end, had a chance to win.
Definitely. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see if it's that, I guess, defined of a statistical breakdown moving forward with the events, because that's crazy. Like, I expected it still to, cream rises to the top, we say that all the time, but
Yeah.
I was even surprised when I knew that the best players had done what they were supposed to do in that event, and then I went to look at it statistically, and I was shocked that like 23 out of 24 is crazy.
Jeremy, I was there live, and let me tell you something. I couldn't believe how few break and runs there were with the caliber of players that were there. It was unbelievable. You would expect at least one player to break and run a race to 4. It's winter break, right? You had Carlo Beato, Fedor Gorst. Nobody did it. Nobody came close to doing it. I don't remember anybody where people were like gathered around like, oh, he's done 3 in a row. He's going to break and run the set. And that was the big fear they had coming in, right? Is that, winter break, race to 4, somebody can break and run 4. Nobody came close to doing that. And I think that speaks to the pressure of that format, right? Everybody knows one little mistake and they can lose a set. And so because of that, it caused them to kind of let that heat get to them a little bit. And it made for a really exciting tournament.
And I wonder if a factor in that also would have been the new Predator tables, people not quite locked in with the break, getting them exactly where they want. We'll see moving forward. It's something to keep an eye on for sure. I have a great question for you, and I guess we're almost running out of time already. We're gonna have to do this again sometime.
Definitely.
I feel like we could probably talk for a couple hours if we had the chance. But I have a question for you. If I told you right now that you had to either give up playing or give up the microphone, which one would you choose?
Playing. I'd have to say, when the pandemic happened and I took a look around at all of these industries that were starting to live stream and podcast and live video and all kinds of stuff, I realized we need more of that in pool. We really need to promote this sport. I'm here at an event with thousands of APA players. And if I walk through here tonight with Sky Woodward right next to me, very few people would be able to pick him out and say, hey, there's Sky Woodward. Or maybe a few would, and they start whispering around. But the vast majority of people here would not know who he is. And that's not a knock on any leagues. That's just saying that we have to do something to get these professional players known to the amateurs so that they can start buying the streams, so that they could show that there's demand for pool on television or streaming or whatever that is. And so when I saw this happening in the pandemic, and Nate Mindham already had the Cue It Up podcast, and some other people were doing something, but I was like, you know what? This is an opportunity to really get more out there. And you probably felt the same way, which is probably why you started doing what you're doing. And one thing I'll say, when I started doing it, I reached out to Nate Mindham. He was totally cool, helped me get Emily Frazier on. We're all kind of working together in this to grow this sport and to do something cool and interesting. And just the people that I've met and the opportunities in the last 10 months, 11 months of doing this has really changed me. And so I every place I go, I have people that come up to me and say, hey, I just wanted to meet you and I love what you're doing. I think it's great. And, to me, I think, wow, that just shows how hungry people are for this kind of content, and we have to keep doing it. So yeah, I love commentating pool matches. I love doing the podcast. I love live interviews, things like that. I'm going to keep doing it because I think that's what we need to really grow the sport. And I love playing, but you know what? I went and sat through 3 days of Johnny Archer and Oscar Dominguez, didn't hit one ball in probably the nicest pool room in the country. So I've kind of come to the realization that I'm not going to be a pro. And I'm probably not even going to get much better as a player, but I can get better as an interviewer. I can get better as a podcaster. I can get better as a commentator, and that's what I'm going to try to do.
Yeah, as much as I love the game, I think I would have to agree. And I'm just getting into this side of it, but I have done a considerable amount of commentary, and I think that's my biggest love right now. You get me behind the mic for a nice match, couple of really good players. I've even done some for bad players, and I still find a way to enjoy it. And
Yeah.
I love it, and it's very there's a huge need for it. We do touch on it with the podcast, but there's a huge need for commentary. Even some of the really nice production live streams that we've watched, and I'm talking the good ones. A lot of the times you get a guy doing commentary that's not necessarily a commentator. He's a tech guy. And it's okay if you're a tech guy and a commentator, that's fine. I'm not talking about you, but there's guys out there that are just doing it because somebody needs to do it. And I thought it was awesome. I'm going to plug Aaron's Pool Parlor one more time here. Last weekend or during the week with Oscar versus Omar, he had Demetrius Gelatis and Josh Burbelon doing commentary, and they were in Minnesota. The technology's there. You and I are talking on Zoom right now. I could hit a button right now and share my screen to you. And I think that was awesome. And I'm going to do a little call to action here for streamers around there. If you got a big event going on, there's no reason that some guy, listen, if you want to do commentary, do it. But there's no reason that all these events can't have excellent top-notch commentary from somebody. There's plenty of guys out there that can talk about the game, break it down at a high level, and articulate their thoughts really well. Mark White is on the Booth Brothers every week, practically begging people to let him do commentary. And I promise you, if you hit Mark White's inbox right now and say, hey, I got a tournament in a couple of weeks, I'd love you to do some commentary, he'll hop on the phone and do it. And the same for me as well. Like, if somebody needs a commentator, I'm here, I'll do it. And I think that's something that we need to start looking into.
Yeah, you're right, Jeremy. And, the point that you make about the quality of commentating is huge. And I think one thing the streamers are starting to figure out how to get paid to do this, because it's a ton of work when you stream. We're still struggling to figure out how to get the commentators paid. We did a match in Phoenix, a buddy of mine, Avery Reese and Chris Adams, they did a big one pocket match, and I was streaming it. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to commentate on this. I play a little bit of one pocket, but let me see if Scott Frost will commentate on this, along with George Teashea, two excellent commentators and with knowledge of that particular game. If they were playing 9-bar, 10-bar, I would have done it. But I was like, you know what? Let me get them in to commentate. And I brought them in to commentate. And we had Mark Griffin he works with OBQs now, donated a shaft, and we raffled off the shaft, and we gave those guys the money for it for commentating, because I just wanted a great production. I didn't want the money for it. I knew I was giving up my time for it, but I wanted the commentators to get paid. I'm so big on that. I think we have to find a way to pay commentators, because when we don't, what we end up with is what you talk about, where it's a tech guy who's filling in, or maybe even it's a pro who's drunk and they throw him in the booth because he's a pro or whatever. No, I want top level commentating every opportunity we can get. And I think we need to figure out a model to make sure the streamers get paid and the commentators get paid, because it's a lot. It's a lot to do to sit there for hours and commentate a match and do a good job of it. And the better ones, like the Mark Whites and the Jeremy Joneses, like, they do a great job and they do their homework. And George Teashea, he comes prepared. He does an interview with me before my match. All of that stuff to make sure that the commentating is top notch when the audience sees it. And so we have to figure out a way to say, we're going to take care of streamer, we're going to take care of the commentator.
Yeah, and you touched on one thing there. You said some pros jumped in the booth and we're doing some commentary, which is cool all the time. But, we just mentioned, just because you're a streamer doesn't mean you're a commentator. Just because you're a tech guy doesn't mean you're a commentator. That goes the other way too. Just because you're a professional pool player doesn't mean you're a commentator. A lot of those guys, they get in there, they got, they have stories and stuff like that, but not all of them are great commentators either.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and we know the ones who are. right? They can break it down and they can it's like when people ask me to give them pool lessons. I'm not good at that because I've been playing pool for a long time and I just see a ball and I know how to hit it and I can't explain to somebody how I would hit that particular ball. So in terms of teaching someone to play pool, I don't really do that, but explaining a pool game and giving the color around it and the reaction of the audience and the fans, I can do that. And so I think you're absolutely right. There's some professional pool players that can break down a match and do a great job with it. And then there's others that kind of struggle with that.
Yeah, and I think the overall bottom line point to everything that we're trying to say is that we do have to have good commentary. I think everybody's in agreement on that. Like you said, the streamers are starting to figure it out. It's a must. It's absolutely a must. If we're ever going to take this game to a broader audience, it's going to start with that, because the play is always going to be good. Like there's always going to be good players, and that hasn't brought in a broader audience in the past, and it isn't doing it right now. It's going to be the production and the commentary, and that's really the most important part if you want to broaden the scope of a television audience. And as you mentioned earlier, marketing these players to the amateurs better. Pool fans are nuts. Pool fans will buy a bobblehead and a fat head and a coffee mug and a pennant banner, and we need to market these guys better. Like there's a lot of stuff that has not been done that could be done to get these guys out there to the fans and bridge that gap between the hundreds of thousands of APA members that we have and the 5,000 Facebook followers that Shane Van Boning has.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that goes back to the question you asked me, would I do pool or be behind the mic? That's why I want to be behind the mic, because there's a lot of work to be done. And I think we can do it. I really do. You look at everything that's happening right now. Look at what you're doing. 2 years ago, you probably didn't imagine doing this, right? 2 years ago, I didn't imagine doing what I'm doing, but there's opportunity. We see it. We see that people are hungry for this. We just have to creatively figure out the best ways to get the exposure to the top players, to get the exposure to the sport and show people how interesting it is. There's not many other sports out there that aren't on TV that so many people have played.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
like everybody's throwing a baseball and baseball's all over TV.
I would say there's none. Like, I don't think you're going to come up with one example.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Maybe not. I don't know if bowling's still prominent on TV. I'm not sure, but that would probably be a
almost
similar
every Sunday you could turn on probably ESPN and watch bowling. So it frustrates me. This conversation frustrates me because I feel like I will say
work here is done.
I feel like we're moving in the right direction. Progress has been made. Your podcast, and you mentioned Nate Mendham and Cue It Up. Guys, if you're out there and you do not know about Cue It Up podcast, go listen to Cue It Up podcast. I feel like, Joey, your podcast, both of them, have really, really grown very, very quickly. I think you guys have a pretty great following. You get a lot of people sharing and everything. And I talk about you guys all the time. But if there's anybody out there that has not checked out Cue It Up podcast, go listen to Cue It Up podcast. What are you doing with your life? They have 200 something episodes, and you can go back and crash course. It's good stuff. But I think we're moving in the right direction. I think if you look at the junior tournaments that are going on around the country, the kids traveling all across the country and hitting all these JIC events and the BEF events, we're gonna watch it this Friday, right? BEF California State Championships. I think we're going in the right direction, and there's a lot more work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think now's an exciting time. People are trying new things. I'm privy to some things right now that I wasn't, before I really got into the podcasting game, about people who have these ideas that they're moving on to really elevate the sport and bring some money into it, some outside money, because that's what we need. And, going back to the commentating thing real quick, Jeremy, I want to say this. I think it's important that we commentate in a way that draws in people who don't know how to play pool. Okay. I think we get focused a lot on the fact that most of the audience currently are people who play pool. So they know, oh, he's going to shoot the 7. My wife, one time after I commentated a match, I came home and I said, hey, did you check it out? She's like, yeah. I said, did I do a good job? She's like, you did a great job. But one thing, I don't know what color the balls are. So you're saying the 7 ball over there by that other ball, and I don't know where the 7 ball is. What if you just said, like, Actually, I don't even know what colors, depending on the set of balls now, the 7-ball.
That's a different issue.
3. If you said like the red 3 ball, then it would help me guide my eyes to it, and I'd be able to see what exactly you were talking about. And I was like, that's a great point. So I just wanted to get that in before we closed out, because I wanted, I know you do a ton of commentating, and I think that's something I forget a lot, is that what if somebody comes in to watch for the first time? We have to draw them in and not like have them feel like it's an exclusive club and you don't understand the colors of the ball, so you can't be a part of it.
I couldn't agree more. And it's something that we touched on a lot in the Freddie Ogner interview. And the point that I made was, this is why the pairings are so important in commentary, because you get two guys in there that bring the same thing to the table and you're hurting yourself. But like Freddie Ogner said, the most fun he's ever had doing commentary was with Raw Hanna. And if you've ever listened to Raw Hanna's not going to probably say one thing about pattern play or strategy or hardly any of that the entire
Q
time
action. You won't hear Q action come out of his mouth. Yeah.
People love him.
Ra's amazing.
Because he knows that. And it's not that, we said this when I talked to Freddie, it's not that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He could do it. But you get a guy like that. You get a guy like Carl Boyce, and Carl Boyce is a world champion. Carl Boyce could go either direction with it, but he makes a point. He goes out of his way to bring in that other audience. And the point that I made with Freddie was that you can't go so far with it that you water down the game and get it to where people understand it and then don't care. Because you can do it in a way that takes away all the intricacy and all the difficulty, because the players make it look very easy. And they'll understand what's going on, and they literally will not care at all because they don't understand why it's important. That's why you need a guy that breaks down the game the way Tony Romo breaks down football. And then you need a guy like Jim Nantz, who's going to bring it back home to the rest of the audience that isn't there, studying parlay cards on Tuesday morning. You know what I mean? I think that's very important.
Well, you brought up Raw and Dexter out there at D-Real. They do their streams, and it's a great ebb and flow between the two of them. Raw is Raw, and Dexter will break down some details about the actual rack and how he would go about taking it. And, from the first day that I logged onto that thing and watched some of their stream, Raw's like, oh, there's Joey Ryan, Pool Player Podcast. I didn't pay him anything for that. Just a great guy, one of the great people in the industry that just helped promote the game of pool. And you see what he's doing on the junior scene right now. But I can't agree with you more. You need that technical breakdown, somebody who's really going to get in the nitty gritty, the Joey Gray, understanding everything about how it's going to go. And then you need that person that's got more color and more, it just makes it attractive for everybody.
Absolutely. And one more thing I'll say about Raw, you just mentioned it, is the guy has one of the best streams around. He has probably more invested in his hardware equipment than just about any streamer I know. And he spends 90% of his time streaming junior matches. And that to me says everything that you need to know about the guy. He could be streaming every single one of these big major challenge matches, big pro events, but he doesn't. He gives all his time to the kids.
Well, look, you see, what are we attracted to? We're attracted to people that follow their passion, right? And with Ra, you see it right away. His passion is with the young generation. It's with the next generation. And he's following that. And it's just infectious. And you want to be around it and you want to support it. And so that's, to me, that's just like coming forefront with him, is that I want to make sure this game lasts far beyond me, kind of build a legacy. And so that's one of the reasons that I was attracted to him. And I said, hey, I'd love to help out and support, so love Ra.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. He's the best. We're really running out of time, Joey. I'm going to have to cut it short. We definitely have to do this again sometime in the near future. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we close out?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you on taking this step and doing this show. When I saw you were planning to do it, I was, sharing it, telling people about it. I'm just excited for anybody that kind of takes the leap to try to build something in this pool world that we have, right? We're all have the same goal. We're trying to make this better and get information out there, get the people out there, and so that we build this base of viewers and fans, really. So thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for having me on. If there's anything that I can do to help you, please let me know. You live in an area that's near and dear to my heart. And so I appreciate you doing the local roundups and stuff too. I check it out. I'm like, oh, they're having a tournament down there. I used to play there. That's cool. So thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate how available you made yourself right from the start. You reached out right away and told me you'd help out any way you could. So, and that means more to me than you'll ever know. So, Joey, it was great talking to you. Thanks for coming on. Good luck with your match tonight. Hope you guys take it down. And I'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Thanks, brother.